Is the NBA dying? That is the question we're asking today. And to be honest, the answer is no. But the NBA does have a problem, and we're going to talk about what they need to do to fix it, some of the theories that might be causing this, and how the Nuggets play a role in that, coming up next on the Denver Sports Podcast. What is up, everyone? Happy Tuesday. Welcome in to the Denver Sports Podcast. And we've got a great show lined up for you guys today. I'm Christian Saez, Brendan Vogt joining you on the show. And Brendan, first of all, welcome. First time that I've had the privilege of having you as a guest on the Denver Sports Podcast since I've been hosting this. Glad to have you on, man.
Thanks, buddy. I think we did a Rocky show together a whole lifetime ago.
Feels like it.
It feels like it. But TDSP, you've been doing a great job with it. I'm happy to be on. I do want to give you and the audience just full transparency. I'm on Nuggets schedule right now.
Yeah.
So my 12 hours are flipped. So 11:16 a.m. It may as well be 5:30 a.m.
Yeah, I feel it.
So I'm in morning mode here.
See, and I'm in off-season mode because I cover the Rockies, and we are not doing anything at all.
Literally.
Right now. So I am completely in off-season mode. This is good. We're in business. We're hanging out. But I always like getting the chance to talk a little basketball. We've been talking a lot of football on TDSP recently because, hey, the Broncos were in the playoffs for the first time in forever, and that was the top story of Denver sports. But now that football season is relatively at a close, at least for Broncos, it's time to talk some basketball. And I've been wanting to talk about this topic for a while because it's been circulating for a few months, this idea that NBA ratings are down roughly around 20-30%, this season. There's less fans in seats. There's, a lot of controversy. There's media analysts going back and forth at each other with coaches and all that kind of stuff. We're going to get into all that as we go. But the vibes just haven't been great this year for the NBA. So I want to break it down a little bit and talk about what's the root cause of that. Why are some of these things happening? What's the fix for this? Are we all overreacting? Is this not a big deal? Let's just get into it here on the show. So I want to ask your take on this first, because you had said, too, that you guys haven't talked a lot about this on the DNVR Nuggets show. What is your take when someone comes to you and says the NBA is dying and is freaking out, ratings are down? What's your reaction?
The way you framed it is very helpful because those are two different conversations. The NBA ratings are down, and the NBA ratings have been down, not necessarily in a linear fashion, but the truth is, since Michael Jordan left the league, this league has yet to regain its status as the behemoth it once was in terms of its ratings relative to what it used to produce. And it just hasn't been the same since. But the question, Christian, is how much does the league care? Yeah. And that may sound counterintuitive, but ratings are really not the entire business model for the league. And the big thing to consider is, while the ratings keep going down, every time the league gets back to negotiate a new deal, a new media deal with its broadcasting partners, that deal goes up.
Yeah, of course. They just signed a record deal.
Great point. So the NBA signed an 11-year media rights deal after turning down Warner Bros. To re-up with Disney, NBC, Amazon, and Prime Video. And that is going to bring in $76 billion over the next 11 years.
Yeah.
Now, in the NBA, Christian, there are guaranteed contracts for star players. This is a guaranteed contract for the NBA. It's not contingent upon the ratings.
Yep.
They've signed this deal. They're getting that money. And so going forward, while they're in this deal, you and I can sit here and discuss the ratings. The truth is, the league may not care at all.
Yeah, they might. Because like you said, the money reigns supreme. And we've had this conversation a lot over the last few years about baseball, because baseball has been in this conversation of like, oh, baseball is boring, baseball is dead, it's a dying sport. It used to be America's pastime. It's been overtaken by the NFL, NBA, all of that kind of thing. But if you look at the financials of Major League Baseball, you look at the specifics, the statistics, there are more people going to baseball games than there ever have been. There are more people watching the postseason than there ever have been. There are bigger superstars. The league is growing. Like, baseball is growing, even though that narrative sometimes feels like it's a shifting sport. So the way I look at this with basketball is like, the NBA isn't dying. Although I phrase the title in that way as a question, the NBA isn't dying. I think it's shifting. It's shifting into a different season, maybe a season of growth. Again, looking at what baseball did, when baseball started realizing there was this conversation of, the ratings are down, blah, 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 like people aren't going to games as much, they shifted and they made the game quicker. They made all these very specific adjustments. I think the NBA is going to shift, as they already have been, the NBA Cup, things like that, where we're going to see those type of shifts that continue to improve the game, or, at least make the game a little different, and hope to bring some excitement to the fans that are feeling a little down and out.
Yeah, and I think, that, again, different conversation, right? Anytime we're on a show talking about our favorite leagues or our teams, we kind of have to understand we're in a minority. Even if it's a large bubble, we're in the bubble of people that really, really care beyond the casual sense. And a lot of people don't. A lot of people have a very casual connection to these leagues. So there really is a big disconnect between, right now, a big conversation within people who really love watching basketball is about how the three-point shot has changed the game. Yeah. And that's a great conversation to have. It's just it's almost, I think, irrelevant. Like, that's a discussion we have amongst ourselves as diehards about the product we want to see. But it's not, I don't know how much those kind of little adjustments actually dictate the growing or shrinking audience, so much as they kind of satiate little corners of the fan base here and there. And leagues will have to do this. As a baseball guy, there's been too much offense lately. Yeah. Okay, all of a sudden you can hit the ball just as hard at the same launch angle, but it's not going out of the park, right? So are they
guys are throwing 110 miles an hour now?
Yeah. Right, yeah. And are they messing with the baseballs because there wasn't enough offense, or the pitching was too good, or the hitters were too good? And the NBA has done some of this with rule changes in the paint. Maybe there's a rule change they'll need to make about limiting 3-point shots. But I would just stress I think that's probably largely a separate conversation we're having amongst ourselves that actually doesn't necessarily, it's probably not the biggest factor in terms of the ratings conversation.
Yeah, and look, I think that's an interesting point. And I like also what Miki in the chat made, the point about, you can't find the NBA on TV depending on where you are.
It's a big part of it.
And that is a big part of it. And I had that as a talking point because I want to start this whole show by talking about what's the root cause in a lot of these ratings dips. And you can go a lot of different routes. The 3-point shot has been tossed around a lot. But I do think the accessibility of the NBA to local audiences has definitely played a role in that.
I would agree.
And we know that. That's near and dear to our hearts here in Denver because we've been dealing with that for, it feels like a decade now with the whole altitude Comcast negotiations and all of the changes that happen every single year because of that. When you are a team that's in the NBA Finals, a team that is, or even just a playoff team playing throughout the regular season, and your fan base can't watch half, if not all, of your games, that's a huge problem. And I remember Adam Silver talking to some of the different media members during that NBA championship run for Denver and saying, like, this is something we need to figure out. And, I'd love for the NBA to do more at just stepping in, but I also know that their hands are tied because it's a local issue in a lot of these cases. So that's a big part of it. The 3-point, stuff is a big part of it, but you can go down a lot of different rabbit holes. And like you said, it's just a matter of which specific problem is affecting which specific part of the fan base, and it's different for everyone.
It is different for everyone. And a great point with the accessibility chat and you, Christian. And I when you're talking about ratings, you are generally talking about a casual audience, right? Consider your diehard audience baked in, right? For better or worse, your league might get better or worse, but Christian's still watching baseball. Yeah. I'm still watching basketball. The casual audience, that's really your ratings conversation. And it really used to just be you had ears on the TV, like you get your local team. Yeah. Does not work that way anymore. Now, here we'll figure out a way how to watch the Rapids, whether he has Apple Plus or not, right? And you'll figure out a way to watch the Rockies, and I'll search every app known to mankind to get a Nuggets game. But some people will simply not do that. Some people will go, all right, well, I can't find it. It's not on my TV, and I didn't care that much.
You'll wait around for a national game.
Yep.
And, you'll say, oh, the Nuggets are playing a national game tonight. Great. And if not, you're just going to get the score on Twitter the next day.
100%. And this is an issue now that, we thought of as a local one, particularly because I think the Cronkies didn't have a lot of options. You've seen other owners stumble into this, and they're at least trying things. The Cronkies, I did feel like it took a while for Altitude Plus as an option. But this is a local issue that's now permeated the national scale. There are a lot of markets across multiple sports where it's TV no longer, television is dead, man. I mean, you have apps. But like TV as this sort of all-in-one concept,
like
that
a
we
cable,
it just doesn't work
antennas,
that. Yeah, it doesn't really work that way anymore. I mean, entertainment is a search bar, and so I think these providers are sort of locked into these battles all around the country, all around the league of like, we're dying. We got to charge you every penny we can for this, while owners are trying to figure out, is this even the way to go? Is this even viable for us to re-up here? So that's a big part of it. And I don't think that can be ignored.
Yeah, absolutely. The media is an interesting part of this because we've talked about, how TV is shifting and how just even being able to watch the local broadcast has been a challenge. That's a huge part of it. But I also think the way that the national media narrates and provides narrative around these games has come into the talking point around this subject, because you see guys like Charles Barkley and JJ Redick getting into it around JJ Redick basically saying, if I'm a casual fan and you've got people on TV telling me every time I turn on the TV that this product that is the NBA sucks, I'm not going to watch the product. And, Charles Barkley going out and clapping back and saying, it's because of the threes. But I do think there is something to be said about the way the NBA handles their players and their fandom, their sport, their product, as they said. So I wanted to make this comparison. I want to get your take on this as well.
Sure.
Because if we compare this to Denver with Nikola Jokic, best player in the world, right? Like, no doubt, in our eyes, best player in the NBA, Nikola Jokic. But let's compare that again to Major League Baseball with Shohei Ohtani, the arguably best player in Major League Baseball.
Coolest player
in Major League Baseball.
Bar none.
But I think there's a lot of similarities between Nikola Jokic and Shohei Ohtani.
Okay.
Both of them don't speak, English is their second language.
Sure.
Nikola Jokic, speaks English more fluently than Shohei Ohtani, but it took a while, and he's not as vocal in the media as at least initially. Shohei Ohtani barely speaks to the media at all, and when he does, he speaks through an interpreter. But the difference is Major League Baseball glorifies, to a fault almost, Shohei Ohtani and what he brings to the sport, and just the narrative around him. And every time Shohei Ohtani plays, even if he's playing the Colorado Rockies, one of the worst teams in baseball, there is 50 different media members there for Shohei Ohtani, and it is just this spectacle. Whereas I think with the NBA, at least for the outside fan, when the NBA media, national media, talks about Nikola Jokic, a lot of times they do it in a debate scenario. They talk about him in relationship to Joel Embiid. Oh, who's better? You're yelling at each other. Well, Joel Embiid's better because of this, and Nikola Jokic is better because of this. And it has this negative annotation behind it where you feel like you have to hate or love someone.
Yeah.
And there's no in the middle. And I feel like that can sometimes be one of the reasons that the NBA struggles with the casual fan, because you feel like there's not a lot of positive stuff when you're not in that market with the superstar player.
I agree, and you touched on this earlier, but then you have a lot of pundits and analysts who it kind of becomes these back and forths with the coaches, and so they're all trying to have this objective discussion about the ratings, but there's really nothing objective about it, right? When we start talking about things like, well, this player isn't as good as that player, he's not as entertaining as that, our personal biases are just seeping into this, man.
Absolutely.
Leaking into it. And that's true with former player analysts as well, which may just stylistically, maybe they don't like it. Honestly, maybe there's jealousy, but regardless of where it comes from, it's probably not helpful to have main figures saying, well, the ratings are down because the league's softer than it used to be, or this player is not as whatever. And
The product sucks, literally, what JJ Redick said. Yeah.
When honestly, that may be true. I don't really think it has as big an impact on the ratings as people think. It's more of just what people really want to vent about.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So I do think there's a lot of negativity in the way basketball is talked about, and that trickles down to the fans. Now I'm talking about the digital landscape, which is getting increasingly pessimistic, but there's a strong economy in, oh, this sucks and oh, it's so over kind of posting. People just love to complain. They just do. And there's a real air of negativity, I think, around the way we talk about basketball. I don't know if that's anywhere near the main source of ratings actually being down, but I do know that it sours some people on the operation on whole.
I agree. And I think, you and I are looking at this through the lens of someone who cares passionately about the Nuggets and the NBA and, as a fan, as an analyst, as a host, whatever that may be. But there are a lot of casual fans out there that, in basketball especially, where you just like going to games, you like watching basketball. I think that's, it's a sport that adheres to that because there's a lot more games than NFL, where you see one game a week and you have to
part of this.
Yeah, exactly. And so it's a different context. I say the same thing again about baseball. Like you're playing 162 games a year, it's background noise most of the season. Like I love baseball, but like I'm not sitting down watching 1 inning to 9 innings every single game.
If you sleepwalk through a podcast mid-season, no one would blame you, right?
Yeah, exactly.
No one would blame you.
Exactly. And that's the NBA sometimes at least at
you're
this point
right.
in the year.
82's a lot. 82's a lot.
Yeah. And so, there's that idea. And I think there's also this idea for the casual fan. And I keep hearing this term getting tossed around a lot. We've solved the NBA. And I want to talk about that after the break because that's an interesting thing to think about. And I want to go a little deeper into that, unpack that a little bit, this idea of, we've solved the NBA. So after this break, let's break that down here in just a moment. But before we do, got to give a shout out to our friends over at Coors Light. The official beer of DNVR, one of the official beers of Colorado, it feels like, literally, because not only were they born and bred here in Colorado, Coors Light was, but the vibes just match, everywhere you go. Whether you're sitting on a rooftop bar at Coors Field in the middle of summer or just hanging out, watching some Broncos football in the middle of winter. Like, doesn't matter what your context is. Coors Light is great.
It's different here.
It does. It really does hit different. And I say that, and I know it sounds kind of stupid, but like, it's just the vibes. I went up to Blackhawk Casino over the weekend with some buddies.
Nice.
And it was actually my first time. Never been.
I haven't either.
I had never been. It was pretty fun. But he brought a big old cooler and popped it open. I mean, I had no idea what he was bringing. And he had a cooler full of Coors Light.
Yeah.
And it was just like, all right, weekend can begin now. Like, we're ready to go. So Coors Light goes well with anything. It's truly the best vibes. Make the most out of those times you choose to chill. Choose Coors Light. Get Coors Light delivered straight to your door by going to Instant Cart at CoorsLight.com/DNVR. Celebrate responsibly. Coors Brewing Company in Golden, Colorado. Also got to give a shout out to our friends over at Bet365 because we don't do ordinary, and it is an incredible time to be in the sports betting world. And I've said it before, but now I get to do a show with the basketball legend himself, Brendan Vogt. Basketball is my favorite sport to bet on. And I know sometimes that's controversial. Sometimes people are like, in or out on sports betting when it comes to basketball. I'm all in, man. College basketball, NBA, whatever it is.
You got to talk to Dev. Superstar Dev hands out the best Nuggets bets on our pregame show.
Okay, that's good to know. That's good to know. I'm really in the college betting world right now. I'm very deep into the college basketball betting world, and that's kind of where I'm finding a lot of my niche. But it's still a lot of fun. And Bet365 has lots and lots of cool discounts, codes, whatever you're into. Use code DNVR365 when you sign up. Deposit $10. Choose between either a bet and get offer by placing a bet of $5 or more and getting $150 in bonus bets, or a first bet safety net offer by placing a bet of up to $1,000. And if your qualifying bet loses, you receive the match refund in bonus bets. Whatever the sport, whatever the moment, it's never ordinary at Bet365. Must be 21 or older and physically located in Colorado. Please gamble responsibly. If you or someone you know has a gambling problem and wants help, call or text 1-800-GAMBLER.
Is he always this good at ad reads, Yaya? Jesus.
I used to be a PA announcer, and that like comes along with the territory. It's a lot of just an entire game of ad reads.
Dude, I cannot imagine being an ad partner and you're like, you could get Christian doing a read or you could get Vogt doing a read. You're like, I don't feel like I paid equally for this.
There's a difference. You know, it's different context. You know, sometimes you like the laid back casual. I bet you crush a Mando, ad read.
Yeah. You give me the right context, sure. But brother, you are polished.
I love it.
It's
I love
impressive.
it. We're getting through it, man. We're getting through it. It's a good week. It's sunny out. We're trying to enjoy the last few days of like mild temperatures before apparently it's supposed to get like negative 100 degrees.
Super cool.
This weekend, it's baseball weather in my mind. I know. We're living
Honestly,
the dream.
it held out pretty long, man. It held out pretty long. The real drop off.
I like my phone brings up old pictures sometimes, like a year ago on this day you were doing this, and I saw like a picture from a year ago today, and it was 0 degrees a year ago today. So I'm like, all right, maybe it's just this Martin Luther King week-ish type time of year. Maybe, I don't know, whatever. It's cold. That's all I know. It's freezing cold. The dogs hate it. We're just trying to get through it. But Nuggets basketball has been pretty good recently. Been on a nice little couple game.
It's a lot better than it was to start the year. Tell you that.
The vibes are better.
The vibes are much better.
I remember having Harrison on TDSP, and and it was one of the weekends where the Avs lost like brutally. This is before they got their new goaltenders. The Broncos lost also very unfortunately, and the Nuggets vibes were at like an all-time low. And it was just one of the worst TDSP topics where I was just like, do all of our teams suck? I know they don't in the grand scheme of things, but you just feel so down. So let's take a moment and acknowledge the Nuggets are doing good.
They are. They're on the upswing. I think there's a lot of middle ground when you talk about the Nuggets between what everyone wants, which is a second title, and how bad maybe things seemed a couple months ago. I would stress that they were never as bad as it felt at their worst. They have played most of the season without Aaron Gordon. I think Jokic has missed now roughly 5 games. And as of today, I think they're a game and a half out of the 3 seed. So they are finding their stride. And, the big question for them right now, 2 big questions is, back it up, 3 big questions. The first, Jamal Murray.
3 big things.
I think this team has reached pretty good status, even with him struggling. To scrape great, they're going to need him to get better. So that's the question that's the conversation we've been having since the Olympics, right? Since the playoffs, really, and it's still a big conversation. The next is the growth of the kids. Peyton Watson, Julian Strawther have been much, much better of late. Are they going to continue to get better? Will they be better players in April than they are now? Because the Nuggets need to get to 7-8 guys in the postseason. And can they keep trending up defensively? Because it was pretty unserious to start the year. But they have been rattling wins together, and their offense is really, really good. So there are some signs that this is not a team to write off.
No, yeah,
especially when they have the best player in the world. And I think for all the talk about how the West got better, OKC is the juggernaut we all thought they'd be, at least in the regular season. From there, it's wide open, especially with Dallas kind of hurt. Houston and Memphis are winning games, but I don't think they're better than Dallas or Denver. And so the Nuggets are trying to work their way back into that bona fide contender conversation, and it's a process.
It's so easy to live in a vacuum when it comes to sports like the NBA, like Major League Baseball, even hockey you could throw in there, that play so many games, because you go on a little skid where you're losing a couple games in a row, or maybe you lose some games to the worst teams in the NBA, and you're thinking to yourself, my God, it feels like the end of the world. But by the end of it, you make it to the playoffs, you're fighting for better seeding, and then the playoffs come, and as long as you've got a relatively healthy squad, it's, like a 0-0 slate. You start clean. And we heard it on the Broncos show saying, I think it was RK who was saying that teams like the Bills, like the Chiefs, their regular season begins in the playoffs, because everything else is white noise. They're going to the playoffs. The Nuggets, I don't know if they're on that exact level, but you feel pretty confident that they're going to be in the playoffs. It's just a matter of how and when and what that looks like.
And are they peaking at the right time?
Yeah. How does that show up? So, for me, it's okay, let's just find ways to stay healthy, get your mind right when the playoffs come around. So, I'm not panicking, but it is good to see that the Nuggets are playing better. But to get back to our conversation about, where the NBA is as a whole and how that has shifted this year, I keep hearing this narrative getting tossed out there that, a lot of fans feel like players have solved the NBA. 3 points are exploding. It feels like the NBA is kind of lackadaisical at times, and guys aren't playing defense like they used to. Sure. And, all of these types of things. You watch college hoops versus the NBA, and you can tell the difference. But again, it goes back to this question: does it even matter? Does the NBA even care that guys are just making it look easy? Does that affect them whatsoever?
They will think actively about it, about the product. They will consider rule changes, but the truth is the NBA does not necessarily care if the casual audience tunes in.
Yeah.
And so if I could back up and I'll give you my whole sort of umbrella kind of thought on this topic in general. Ratings are certainly down, and there are a handful of factors involved. I think we all like to pick our favorite ones. The reality is it's adding up to something rather than one being the biggest. First, we're in the accessibility era, the inaccessibility era. So are people doing this on Stream East? Are casual audiences even bothering when it's not on TV? I agree the media negativity is a factor. The length of the season, the demands on the body, and how that's manifested in less defense, stars playing less games. I think all of these things, Christian, are factors in fewer people tuning in. But it doesn't matter to the NBA at all because they just signed a guaranteed, what did I say, $76 billion deal over the next 11 years. And the truth is, while the NBA's ratings are down compared to their peak in their heyday domestically, the league is more popular than it's ever been globally. And what you have now are more programming options than ever. At any given moment, someone could be tuning in to something else more than ever before. And what this is to Disney, NBC, Amazon, who just paid $76 billion for something that's the ratings are declining, it's still a superior option to the other programming options at the time. And what it becomes is a vehicle for advertising. It's still the best way for them to say, we have this, a lot of people watch this, you should advertise on it, you should pay us a lot.
Yeah.
And as long as that economy is like flowing and strong, the ratings part of this is almost irrelevant. And the people tuning in today will probably keep watching. I will keep watching. The NBA is banking on that. And they are very comfortable with the X amount of people who have just said, hey, I'm out, or I'll tune in the playoffs. That's okay with them. I do think there are a lot of factors that are worth talking about. All the ones we listed. The parity is one of them, right? We like that. We've had different champs in the last 6 years.
Yeah.
But the modern peak of ratings was when LeBron and Steph went head to head like 80 times in a row.
Sure.
The truth is
we love it.
Audience at large preferred that. So yeah, man, you could pick your reason for why the ratings aren't what they were, but that's not necessarily a reflection of the health of the league. I would say the $76 billion they're bringing in over the next 11 years tells you is what matters most. And it's not that these conversations don't matter. It's not that you shouldn't care about ratings. It's just, if you love basketball will be there tomorrow. $76 billion is a lot of money. And so as they tweak with the in-season tournament and maybe eventually the average player taking fewer threes because of some rule change, they'll tweak, but the reality is they'll live with the picture at large because everyone's profiting.
Yeah, I agree. And, you talk about the tweaks that the NBA is making. And I think this is why we have this conversation is, you're right, like, this isn't a freak out, the world is ending, NBA is going to die, and we're all, never going to see basketball ever again type of situation. It's more of a precursor to what changes are the NBA planning on making? Is the NBA planning on making? And again, we saw this with baseball when they started having that narrative get out there that baseball is slow and boring and a dying sport. Baseball didn't go away. It just shifted a little bit. They said, we're going to put in a pitch clock. We're going to speed up the game. So we're going to make things a little bit better for the average viewer to enjoy. So this conversation to me feels more like a precursor to what kind of changes does the NBA end up making? Where does the direction of the NBA head from here on out? That's where this is going.
Sure.
The NBA is not going to go anywhere. The NBA is not dying. It's not a dying sport. It's not even an unpopular sport. It's incredibly popular. It's just going to be a sport like any other that is going to have to change and adapt and get with the times to make sure that it's making the most of its market potential. Not to get all too businessy on you here, but there's opportunity cost that they're losing with ratings being down, but they're still making an insane amount of money. So Adam Silver is going to have these conversations of like, what can we do to make it even that much better?
Sure, of course.
If we're down 20% this year, what can we do to be down maybe 15% next year? That's going to make you still a little bit more money. So after this next break, I want to ask a question to you and then go a little deeper into some of the fixes or some of the improvements that the NBA might be making. But the question I want to ask to you after this break is the NBA Cup helping or hurting the NBA? Because that's the biggest change that we've seen, enacted in the NBA in the last couple of years. So is the NBA Cup helping or hurting the league? We're going to break that down after this break. But before we do, I want to highlight some upcoming events that we have here at DNVR. One of them being involved with the Denver Nuggets. January 31st at 5:30 p.m. DNVR Nuggets watch party right here at the DNVR bar. That is going to be a good time. And now that football season's done, like I said, I am fully invested in basketball, in the NBA, in the Denver Nuggets. I love hockey too. I'll throw them in the mix there as well. But I'm a basketball guy. After baseball, it goes basketball for me. And Nuggets watch parties here at the bar. I know you guys are mixed in throughout there. If you're not at the game, you guys are hanging out, grabbing some drinks, some Coors Lights downstairs, and just watching good basketball. That's going to be a lot of fun. Again, January 31st at 5:30 p.m. And then going back to hockey, February 28th at 5 o'clock p.m. This is a top shelf event, guys, at thednvr.com/events. It's the Avalanche Suite Takeover versus the Minnesota Wild. What a vibe that is going to be. If you want to watch hockey in a suite with the Avs crew, watching your Avalanche hockey out there on the ice, it's going to be a great time. You have to buy tickets for that, though. Those tickets do sell fast. Go to thednvr.com/events for more information. Again, that's February 28th at 5 o'clock p.m. DNVR Avalanche Suite Takeover. Also got to give a shout out to our friends over at Empire Today. If you are in the market to get your floors replaced, like so many people are, and it's that time of year too where it's, your floors are getting wet. You start getting those bubbles popping up in the floors. The weather takes a toll on it. Maybe your dogs are running in and out of the house a lot. And you just look down one day and you say, look, it's time to replace that floor. My floor looks more like a basketball court than it does the floor of my living room. And if you're in that spot, Empire Today, they've got you covered. They replaced all the floors in our studios and also in our other market studios, PHOI, PHNX, CHGO. I didn't know that until just a few days ago, that they have done our entire company's studio floors. They did an incredible job. They are truly top-notch when it comes to quality, service, speed, and all of the premier things that you want to make sure you prioritize when you're getting a new floor. One of the coolest things about Empire Today, they use the virtual floor designer. You take a picture of your living space. You can see what that floor is going to look like when you get a new floor. It's a really great opportunity.
Can you imagine if you had to buy it and then they installed it and that's how you decided?
Yeah.
Like, you know what? I don't like it.
Can you imagine living, 30 years ago when that kind of stuff happened?
No, I can't.
Yeah,
I really can't.
Unbelievable. They do great work. So schedule a free in-home estimate today. All listeners of this show can receive a $350 off discount when you use promo code DNVR. Restrictions apply. See EmpireToday.com/DNVR for details. All right, welcome back here to the Denver Sports Podcast. Christian Saez, Brendan Vogt, breaking down, this whole season of concern for some casual NBA fans across the league. So the big question now is what the NBA is doing to shift, what they're doing to improve on their product, and to bring back some of the viewers, the more casual viewers that are feeling a little frustrated for whatever reason. So the question I asked to you before the break that I want to get an answer on now is the NBA Cup helping or hurting the league?
Great question, and I'm going to do the same deflection I've been doing the whole podcast. I don't know that the NBA cares, because very quickly it turned from, oh, here's this new thing we're trying. It might be more exciting. Maybe more people will watch it, to maybe more partners will buy in. Emiratis bought the naming rights, right? So this is a multi-year, partnership now between the NBA and the Emiratis. So it's the Emiratis NBA Cup. Does that money, does the global ad partnership trying to grow the game globally, does that actually ultimately mean more to them than people tuning into these games? Quite possibly. And they get to throw this big event in Vegas and add an extra game to the schedule. So I have already changed my perspective on this from an attempt at bringing viewers in to just another way to bring more money in. Yeah. I'm halfway there. Some of these games I love. I think the semis and stuff are really cool. The finals being in Vegas, I think ultimately it culminates in this really soulless kind of event where it'd be so much cooler if one of the respective fan bases was involved and cared. But you kind of just end up, it almost feels like the end of this early season college tournament that is fun to watch on ESPN, but no one really asks for or cares, you know? So I don't know. I don't really think it's going to help with ratings. And I've also changed my mind on this as to, once again, I don't know how much they care.
I will say, going back to like the foundation of the question, is the NBA help, or is the NBA Cup helping or hurting? I think it's helping, you know, because I just think it gives something unique in a relatively quiet time of the year to just talk about a little bit, if nothing else. And like you said, there's always the money side of this. The money part is what makes everything run. That is the foundation of the NBA. But I think for the fans, it just gives you something to talk about. Even if you don't really care that much, you're like, hey, look at that NBA court. Look how atrocious that looks. Or look how great
you're
that
at a bar, looks. The game's kind of on. Even if you don't know what's going on, you're like, hey, why does the court look like that?
If nothing else, D-Line and I sat down on TDSP and did a whole debate on whether or not, like, and going through the list of NBA Cup courts and being like, is that hot or not?
Right.
You know,
like they do make you go, hey, what's going on here?
Yeah.
And I actually really didn't. I liked the introduction of it at first. Again, I'm still sort of on the fence with how it's played out. But at the end of the day, I think if you really like the game and you go, here's a tournament.
Yeah.
Tournaments are awesome.
Yeah.
And people like to go, well, why does it matter? Most tournaments don't. Like, again, I'm going back to college. There are a lot of tournaments to start the season. The global football game, there are just tons of tournaments throughout the year. Yaya knows this. Chances to win things. Why do they matter? Yeah, because competitors decided.
You get a trophy from it. Like, why not? Yeah.
You put professional competitors in a tournament and they went, hey, you can win this one or lose this one. And as it turns out, they typically want to win. And so I'm okay with its introduction to my life as a basketball fan. But I'm skeptical that it's really some game changer for the ratings. I'll be honest.
Yeah, no, it's funny because, you know, you talk about like just the competitive side of it. I think of it like a bowl game almost. And I know bowl games are in a controversial state right now because people are saying, well, they don't mean anything. Like, why do I care about watching, you know, these two random teams play for nothing besides just this, the Pop-Tart Bowl name? But I had this conversation with Justin Michael a couple weeks ago where we were talking about like, how do you make bowl games meaningful again? And I had said, turn bowl games into a rivalry game. Like, you know, have bowl games earlier in the year where, you know, it's just the naming rights. You buy the naming rights of a rivalry game, CU versus CSU, Texas versus Texas A&M, you know, whatever those big rivalries look like. Buy out the naming rights and make those the bowl games. People will watch that, or make your rivalry games later in the year. And people, again, will 100% watch that because they like the competition of it. Even if that game doesn't really mean anything outside of just an in-state rivalry.
No.
You know, so if you could take some of the bigger rivalries across the NBA and really hype those up, turn those in, change the name of them, make them into this big spectacle where it's like, yeah, it's the middle of dead time NBA, you know, but hey, the Lakers are playing the Nuggets right now. And that's a big rivalry that we have happening right now. And so when you see that game on the schedule, when you're releasing the schedule, you turn that into a spectacle before the season even starts. That could be a cool way of spicing things up. Just I almost feel like you'd be over dramatic. The NBA Cup is over dramatic, and it's fine. People kind of enjoy the spectacle of it, you know? Like, be over dramatic.
One thing that they should be doing is taking it out of the regular season completely.
Yeah.
Make it not a part of that count.
But just a full extra tournament.
Like a full extra tournament. Like, that's what makes these big games, like in soccer especially, that has like 50 tournaments to win. Like, that they don't count towards your season. So, like, you get to decide how much effort you want to put in each one. And that's where you get, like, really big upsets.
Yeah.
And also bringing in, like, other teams. I know it sounds stupid, but, like, bringing in some European
Completely agree. Completely agree. You the Noah Lyles conversation Let's just why maybe the finals is the EuroLeague champ versus the NBA champ. The issue you run into, you're making too much sense. What you've now talked about is adding a whole tournament on top of an 82 game schedule.
You drop the 82 game schedule to a 50 game schedule. The next 30 are just a tournament. You already have the NBA Finals tournament. Also, make it.
I'm in.
If you win the most games in the season, that's your reward. You win the regular season award. You won the playoffs are another tournament, basically.
Yeah.
And you're the NBA Finals champ. Soccer does it all the time. Why can't you do it in basketball? More trophies, and then you make a little mini tournament. You bring the European champion, you bring the Cup champion, the playoff champion, and the regular season champion. A 14 tournament to see who's the best team in all the world.
I worry sometimes about that, though, of like, if you create too much tournaments, too many championship type games, does that devalue the NBA championship?
Right. Or even the 50 games left over in the regular season. You're like, all right, there's so many things to care about. Why do I give a shit about these? Excuse me. But I think you're onto something. The issue you get is the way changing the 82 game regular season schedule will affect paychecks and money, and no one's ever going to agree to that. But I think you could solve a lot of problems by having a shorter season, and stars would play more games, guys would play more defense. You would have room to try things like Yaya suggested. It's just one of those obvious solutions staring us in the face that will never happen because people will lose money via that solution.
Yeah.
And as much as we love our sports, someone in the chat said you guys might as well be talking about endgame capitalism. You can ditch the might as well. That's what we're doing. And these are businesses. So those parts will never change. Unfortunately.
It will not change. But I do think there are going to be those slight shifts as we go. I think things like more City Connect jerseys, like incentivizing teams to get more creative, have more design elements. Again, talk to D-Line about that a lot. I think that kind of stuff is fun. Even if you hate them, even if you hate the jerseys, like it's still cool
Something
to talk about.
Yeah.
It gets the fans engaged more. I had talked about prioritizing rivalry games. I like that the NBA is incentivizing teams to make sure their top players are playing in key games. Joel Embiid. So, things like that. Like, that's a good step in the right direction. If I'm going to be watching a big rivalry game or even just not even a rivalry game, but just a top game in the NBA, I want to see the best players playing. I don't want to have to go to a game and then be sitting out because they're tired.
Agreed.
So, I mean, you've seen other things tossed around like, oh, should we move back the 3-point line again? Should we make that more, there are all these conversations that are going to happen and, some realistic, some unrealistic. The reality of it is, though, like Brendan said, the NBA is going to continue to improve and live on, and the playoffs are going to come around, and this whole conversation is going to go right out the window because it's basketball. It's the NBA. Just like when March Madness comes around, whether the college hoop season, which has been a little bit weird this year, as someone who follows college hoops, March Madness is going to come around, and I'm going to watch every single one of those games.
Every game. And again, I can't stress this enough. I'm not saying this to be depressing because I care about soulfulness, but we could all stop watching, every single one of us, and every last penny of this $76 billion is coming in. So it's just the NBA's economy isn't really built around ratings. It just isn't. They may care. They may try things. They may want you to watch. But the sort of bottom line of the health of the league is just that stuff is irrelevant. Really quickly, once we're having the larger conversation, we only briefly touched on the 3-point conversation.
Sure.
Solving basketball is interesting. I think in terms of the floor, there is something scary about the way it's like, actually, if you just shoot 35 threes and you hit enough of them, anyone could beat anyone at any point in time. You do not need to tune into these games until the fourth quarter because a 20-point lead means nothing. But solving basketball at the very top, I think as long as best players take unique forms of greatness, teams will be built around their best players in different ways. The very best example right now, the Denver Nuggets won the title 2 years ago with this same formula. They're dead last in the league in 3-point attempts. Jokic versus the Celtics in the finals would be really fascinating. You would have a team that's embraced this modern, just chuck them up. I shouldn't just say just chuck them up, just the modern offense to the nth degree versus the best player in the world who can get you 2 every time he wants it. And that it'd be really interesting to see if while we're having this 3-point conversation, could Jokic and the Nuggets still win this title? Not holding my breath for it right now, but if they beat the Celtics, isn't that kind of funny how you go, are we ever going to really solve basketball so long as greatness takes different forms? That said, for the average player and the average game, I do think the 3-point shot has changed the game so drastically. We may face a point where there are conversations about, like, eventually you couldn't just hang out in the paint, right? Is there some sort of approximate? You can't just hang out in the corner, or the corner doesn't exist anymore. I'm not sure what the solution is there, but I am very curious to see if Jokic can push this math problem to the brink and even overcome it, because I think it would make this conversation just that much more interesting.
I love that. I love that take, because you're right. And I think it's one of the reasons why I love the dynamic between NBA, college sports, or college basketball, for example, because I talked about it earlier. You notice the difference between NBA and college. Now, college is, I think, starting to also turn more into a 3-point shooting, organizational, all the different teams throughout. But it's still, it's a much faster pace. Guys are still really trying to earn it. It's less games, that kind of stuff. But I love the dynamic there. And I think your point about Jokic, if he is going to be someone that changes the game by pushing it kind of back or leveling it back out, is a better way of putting that.
Yeah.
We've seen time and time again that Jokic has changed the game of basketball, just like Steph Curry changed the game of basketball towards a 3-point shooting league. Does Jokic push the NBA, at least the bigs in the NBA, towards a different style of play than what we're seeing? Is it very separated between guys who can shoot threes and guys that can play the Jokic style of basketball?
Right.
That's a great conversation.
And of course, ironically, Jokic leading the league in 3-point percentage.
Of course, because he does everything.
He does.
We would expect nothing less. I did want to ask the question after this last break about, we've talked about the national narrative around, the disdain that the media, the national media, has for some of the players and stuff. But I wanted to also ask and get your take on, some of the narrative around just the teams. For example, if a team like the Denver Nuggets made the NBA Finals this year, is that a good thing or a bad thing for the league? We'll have that conversation in just a moment. All right, back here on the Denver Sports Podcast, Christian Saez, Brendan Vogt. And I know this question is going to piss off a lot of people, and I say this, I already know my answer for this, so I'm asking this more of just to start the conversation. But if the Nuggets were to make the NBA Finals this year, is the league happy about that?
They should be. They should be.
I know they should be.
Jokic has actually proven to be a draw. It's all relative. Within this, the ratings are down conversation. Jokic against the Lakers or the Warriors or big names has proven to be a draw. He's also just an awesome watch. We're biased, but we know that to be true. But also because of what I just talked about on the other side of the break. It's awesome how we're in this parity era. It's awesome that there's been different champs for the last, I think, 6 years. I don't think in the last 6 years the defending champs have even made it back to the conference finals. Denver got as close as anyone before blowing that lead. But people love the marquee matchup in the finals. And in the last 2 years, Denver and Boston have let each other off the hook, respectively. Mm-hmm. Last year, Denver let Boston off the hook. 2 years ago, Boston let Denver off the hook. I think everyone wants to see this matchup. Now, OKC and Cleveland are great, and maybe they have leapfrogged Denver in these conversations. I still think at its very best, the matchup you really want to see right now is Jokic versus the Celtics. And this math game play out on the biggest stage. I do think that's probably the most complete roster versus the best player in the world and the stylistic clash. And of course, the Celtics, as much as I hate to say it, that's a big prestige draw for the league. I think that matchup in the finals would go a long, long, long way for the finals ratings, for bringing the average person back in and going, this is going to be awesome. And you're going to want to sit down for all 7 games should it go that long.
Yeah, I think there's a big difference between what the league wants and what the fans want. Now, I think the fans have shifted and recognized, where things have changed with Nikola Jokic and the Denver Nuggets. I think the first year that they went to the finals, people were like, ugh, gross. We got to watch the Nuggets. Jokic, like he's not fun to watch. And then they watched him and were like, oh, damn.
Super fun.
He's pretty damn fun to watch.
Pretty cool, actually.
The league also knows that. Although I think the league is, like you said, very focused on the money side of it. So whichever matchup is going to bring you the most money, that's what they want.
That's what they always
right?
want,
Like
yeah.
they don't really care about anything beyond that. But I do think it speaks to the fans, average fans or even diehard fans of other markets, that they recognize how enjoyable Nikola Jokic can be to watch play the game of basketball. And I think, again, I make the baseball comparison just because that's my sport, that's my world. the Yankees and the Dodgers in the World Series this year was the best possible scenario for Major League Baseball.
I mean, it's as big as it gets.
It's big as it gets, right? I mean, it's a cultural clash with
the
major
stars on each-
superstars.
Major.
And so I think it goes beyond just the teams. I think it goes into that superstar player specific, you Jason Tatum versus Nikola Jokic. I mean, you look at the size of the stars, and that's what you have to take a lot of stock into. So I just wanted to at least toss that out there because I do think that's changed from where we were a couple years ago when the Nuggets first made it to the championship. It was like, no, we don't want the Nuggets in the championship. And now it's like, you know what? That's actually a really good matchup.
You can put the Nuggets on opening night. You can put them on Christmas. You can put them on national TV. They're going to draw. And when Jokic is really engaged, they're going to be a very entertaining watch. And again, for anyone who's tired of just watching teams jack up threes, you want to find the best team in the league that doesn't just do that. Denver is in that conversation simply because they have Jokic, and Jokic is the best player that is a zag to that zig that we have in the universe. So, the Nuggets are a healthy counter to what the Celtics have going on. And I think the more the NBA can embrace that, the better. What's really funny, man? Giannis and Jokic this year have their first ever nationally televised matchup.
Really?
First ever.
Wow.
Now, those are probably your two best players in the world.
Yeah.
I was saying Luka for a while. I think Giannis has proven it's still him. How have they not played yet on national TV?
Yeah.
So they're like things like that too, where it's like help yourself, right? You see the numbers this guy brings in when he plays the Lakers and plays the Warriors. Put him on national TV more.
Look at when the Spurs came to Denver and with Wemby. And Wemby is not on that level yet, but he's one of the most interesting players to watch just because of how unique his game is. And when he got to come play in Denver, it was like, this is such a fun matchup.
I've never seen, now Jokic is putting up monster numbers against Wemby, right?
Yeah.
But at the same time, Wemby is making Jokic, I think out there more.
He's just a freak. I mean, the dude's,
that's like already a must-see
insane.
matchup. Insane. Yeah. So, and those are all over the NBA, man. There's a lot of star power. So leaning into that stuff can help as well. And so I think right now, I'm saying this biased to all heck as a Nuggets fan, but Jokic is very, very good for basketball for more than one reason.
Yeah, I love it. Let's get to some of the super chats here before we wrap up this show. Got a couple popping in here. First one, this is a great podcast. Thanks for this. I appreciate that.
Shout out Christoph.
Christoph, there you go.
I can't say the last name, so don't ask
Christoph,
me for help.
you did better than I did on that one. Christoph, I love the spelling of that as well. Appreciate that. NBA TV costs 20% of Polish GDP, but I still watch it. That's good. I like that. We all still hang out in the NBA world. This one from Peter talking about the negative NBA media. I like how they talk about Jokic's body. No other star gets insulted about how they look like he does. Other body types do exist and can ball than the NBA standard. I agree with you, man. And I know you guys have had this conversation ad nauseum. Nikola Jokic is sleepy strong, sleepy fast. He's sleepy quick. I mean, the dude surprises everyone. It's part of why his game is what his game is. I mean, he can ball even when he doesn't always look like
he's an Iron Man.
Can ball.
He's an Iron Man.
And so I think the world has been put on notice. I think people know now. And it goes back to my point I just made just a few minutes ago. I think the national fan base knows what Jokic can be. They've seen the highlights. They even saw him in the playoffs doing that, no look pass behind the backs.
Once he swept the Lakers,
it was on blast.
If you didn't know, now you know.
Yeah. Welcome to the Nikola Jokic show.
Yeah. Now you know.
Now you know. So I don't think there's people getting on the fan side getting more surprised, but the national side of it. And look, I get it. I've worked with people who have transitioned to being on the national side of media. I've talked to national media people, especially producers. I've worked with a lot of producers who are now national sports producers. There is a business side behind that where they have to sell as many viewers, as many clicks, as many numbers as they possibly can. And the way you do that, at least in the NBA, is by hot takes, by being polarizing, by Nick Wright and Stephen A. Smith screaming at each other, and Shannon Sharp, and all of these guys, love them or you hate them. But that is what they have to do to get the viewers that they're going to get. To be blunt, boring doesn't sell.
Which is why you can watch the DNVR Nuggets podcast 5 times a week on YouTube and Spotify, where we care a lot. It's not boring, but we do our best to to get a little more nuance, like Christian and I did.
Well, and
here
you
today.
see the reality. You're not, I think, handcuffed to a national producer or director that tells you like, hey, whether you disagree with this or not, like you got to have to talk about
Here's what
this.
people want to hear.
Yeah,
Yeah,
you
yeah.
can talk about exactly what's on your mind, how you feel. It's why you have such a intense, fan base, viewership. We appreciate you guys. We love you guys because that's what makes all of this run. We're very honest and transparent about what happens, behind the scenes with the Nuggets, and we are just grateful that the Nuggets are what they are for us. Because again, I get to cover the Rockies during the summer, and I'm very, very grateful for that. But it's a grind sometimes. I am glad when I get to talk about the Nuggets for a break.
I think this is a good time to lock in if you haven't yet. I think the best of the Nuggets is yet to come, and they're hitting their stride, man. So hop on board.
Deadline right around the corner.
Trade deadline, baby. Let's do it. Love you guys. Appreciate you guys hanging out with us. We're gonna wrap things up. Again, Christian Saez, Brendan Vogt. Appreciate you hopping on the show,
up,
man.
man.
This
That was awesome.
fun. Yeah. Shout out to you for pressing the buttons as you always do. Thank you guys for watching at home. We'll see you guys next time here on the Denver Sports Podcast.
We all silly like the mayor.